sometimes it's a bit much, but it's always good to know to at least understand the basics. You don't have to perform, but you can judge much better if you heard about it. I mentioned it once or twice today too, or in the coming lessons, so at least you know what I am referring to. Okay, the topic of this lecture and also the coming three more, I think it is, lectures, is really about the actual writing process of the thesis or of the paper, basically all related. So today we are starting with the start, with the hypothesis, the question, outline, research plan, basically with how to start writing a scientific text. How do you go about it? First, I also have to ask your patience if some of the slides look a bit strange or the text is a bit strange. I am not having a very good run of it after this endless cold. I just a few weeks ago went and ruined my right arm by dislocating it, so I can't type anymore. Which is also the reason why I'll have to, there's no script. I'll make the slides available so you can look up on them. I also will write a script as soon as I can write again, just so you know, okay? Now, about what I wanted to talk about today, just the basics. Those of you who've already been in the workshop will remember quite a bit of this, I'm certain, because I did go will go, for those who are looking forward to that, into detail about how to start a thesis. So really first, what is a thesis? What are the expectations generally from the people who tell you to write a thesis? What types of theses are there? Then how do I start? For review thesis, or for reviews, or also for experimental work. So one of the first questions is, why do you have to write a thesis? I mean, yes, because obviously we tell you to, but usually there's a reason behind things like that. Do you know what the reason is for writing a thesis? Why are you made to write one? Any idea? Yes, no, maybe. No, that's a clear answer. Except being forced to do it. Well, the basic idea behind the thesis, you had any type of thesis, bachelor, master, diploma, doctorate, whatever, it's supposed to prove something. It's supposed to be a written proof of your ability to do scientific work. That's scientific logic, scientific arguing, something like that. And the question, of course, how can a thesis do that? Prove your ability to do scientific work. That's based on what is expected of a thesis. And that's really the same things are expected from every type of thesis, only from a doctoral thesis to a much larger degree than for a bachelor thesis, for instance, and the others fall in between. But the basic requirements are the same. You have to have a clear question. You have to find the data in the literature or set up your experiment to get the data, depending on what type of thesis you are writing. Extract the data, analyze it, present it logically, use it to scientifically argue your question, use a correct format, a correct style, use correct citation, all of these things. And of course, that's what you can see from the written text. So these are the expectations, which it doesn't matter where or when or how. Whenever you write a thesis, a scientific one, that is what is expected of you to some degree. Speaking of expectations, length and duration, that's usual, at least what's usual around here. Yeah, length in pages. You can see it from bachelor, master, diploma, dissertation. The length increases. The time that is also supposed to go into it increases from like about 2 months for the bachelor to really 2 years dissertation. Why not really 3 to 4? More realistic. We are not quite as strict with you. We're lucky in that respect. Basically, For a master thesis, we don't want to see 60 or 80 pages, but quite a bit less. And 4 months, that's full-time writing. You need that for 60 to 80, so you also do it in a bit less time, definitely a few less pages. Still, just so you get an idea. Now, based on these expectations, of course, we have a definition of what exactly is a master thesis. Yeah, a written scientific piece of work, sure, which has to show that you are able to do what was mentioned in the prior slide. Really, if you define a master thesis, it's supposed to be this: independent scientific academic work, poses and answers a clear, specific question, and contributes something new to the scientific community. That's basically the 3 main defining points. The most important one for us in general, something's wrong here, okay, being point 2. Poses and answers a clear question. If you remember from the requirements, that was also the very first thing that was named and mentioned. And that's the key to a thesis. It's also a key to a review or a key to a research paper. But for a thesis, definitely. It has some consequences, of course. So I'm starting with the most important point, even though it's 2 in my listing. As I said before, it doesn't treat a topic, it answers the question. You keep that in mind, it'll work out, really. Well, that's the main point. Yeah? To answer that question, you summarize and analyze available relevant data, and then you draw your conclusions using scientific argumentation from the gathered data. That's a thesis. That's it, really. The other 2 points mean that in addition to this, most important one, yes, you remember, yeah? The result of your thesis is the answer to a question. That's what it's all about. So that question is the key to the thesis and not the thesis title. Very, very common mistake. It should contribute something new. In a thesis, which is not published, the new part should be, it's listed in here, yes, what you do. Your definition of the search strategy, we talked about that in text lessons quite a bit longer ago. The fact that you compile the data, you analyze the data, you interpret it, you answer it, you use the data to answer your question. If the question has already been answered by someone else, okay, for a thesis, note if it's a publication. There should not be multiple papers out there that do exactly the same thing, obviously, either for a literature report or for an experimental thesis. Experimental study. For a thesis, it's not quite an absolutely strict. So your scientific contribution, the new part, it says down here, is you are answering your initial question using the data you searched for and found. So it's really it's a process of searching and applying logic to answer the question. Independent scientific academic work, yes, that means written in a specific style. We talked about that in earlier lessons. What is a specific scientific style? It has to be properly referenced, correctly citing all the facts, giving credit where it's due. In other words, somebody once said, if you didn't invent it or were born knowing, you have to cite it. Basically, that summarizes it. And it's based on a specific type of data. We talked about that also in prior lessons. Okay, specific type of thought written in a specific way. It's not just a collection of facts. There has to be an interpretation of the facts. It's not a summary of the conclusions of different people. If you just summarize the conclusions, it's not original work because you didn't look at the data, you're just repeating what other people already thought. Okay. Based on unsubstantiated opinion, written in acceptable style. That's, I think, kind of obvious. Types. Two types really. Literature review, which is for us the most common one, or original research work, which is also possible. The difference is in the information you use. And I'll try to talk about both. Actually, since it's only the two of us, or the three of us, if we count Marvin, you can actually tell me what you'd like to hear more about, so we can focus on that. Structure. All theses look more or less the same. Here's introduction, here's a method, result, discussion, and then several appendices. With the red stuff being the important part and the long part. Master thesis versus publication. I mean, you'll hopefully only have to write one master thesis, maybe two if you get very frisky. Maybe, so what's the point of this? If you're thinking about maybe writing publications, you never know. So basically, what's the difference? Any idea? Is there a difference? If yes, what? The main point really is that for all of these things that I'm telling you, which is thesis relevant, it's also publication relevant, because basically there is no difference. The main differences are that quite often theses are not published, but they can be. And another one is that sometimes the requirements of those who correct the thesis are not as strict and as high than when you want to publish it. Apart from that, no difference really. So basically, it's applicable to everything. So before you start writing any type of scientific text, what should you have before you start? Some basic things, like basic knowledge of scientific argumentation. How do I argue correctly? I'll go into that in the results or discussion part, I hope. Knowledge of what's expected of me and my thesis, or me and my paper. Usually you can look that up in the requirements of wherever you need to send or submit it. Length and format, same thing. Citation, plagiarism, talk about that too. Knowledge of where and how to search, we talked about that already a bit. We might go into it a bit more in the response. You also need a world-based research question and sub-questions. You should definitely have the first idea before you start writing. Yes, you need time to get there, but you should definitely, before you start, have a good idea of the answers to your questions. I mean, if it's a review, a solid idea of what is published in literature that I can use to answer my questions, like 80% of the papers you will want to use in the thesis, or well-planned or conducted experiments before you start the writing process. That includes a good idea of your structure and time plan.